got Elaine Lamont to the right. She's my better half. And I got Charlie Cardona to the left. He is my other half. He's like my right-hand man. And I'm sure by now you guys have seen the stuff that we've got back there. We're going to talk about the GANGFREE Project later on. We have more important stuff to talk about now. The other piece I want to talk about here is I want to show off this fancy, hot, pink Sony laptop and the matching pink wireless mouse. Yes, I am very secure in my mayonnaise. Unfortunately, all this stuff is on her laptop, so there is no way for me to ever forget that she's always with my side.
Wow.
And I even forgot to change the backdrop. I got to see the little puppy dog doing the winky thing on the backdrop of the computer. So, thanks, honey.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about gang ideology and gang recruiting. Now, it'll kind of speed up from this point on. That first bit kind of gets a little slow, but we kind of go over some things very in detail, but we're going to go over a little bit here. Ideology and recruiting. Why do guys join gangs? Why do they join them? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, we don't have a clue. In theory, we think we do. But there's a lot of stuff out there. There's been professor and reports done and assessments done and surveys done about all these different types of reasons. Why does somebody join something that they know they got to commit crimes to get in or out of? They know they've got to do it. But it all comes down to these 6 areas that seem to be the most common. Identity or recognition, family generational influence, pseudo-family, protection, intimidation, and most recently, and unfortunately my favorite, media influence. Identity or recognition, perceived as a status that is otherwise unattainable. They'll probably have so low self-esteem. They need peer pressure, need to belong, specific identifiers for instant recognition. Now let me just give you an idea. If you think back to when you were in school, we all know that there were those kids that they could be out for a week and you would never even know it. Right? Let the high school quarterback be out for a week. Do you think you'd know it? If the lead cheerleader was out for a week, would you know it? If your star wrestler was out for a week, would you know it? Absolutely you'd know it. Because they have a status within the school. The principal would probably be calling, won't know how little Johnny's doing. But if this kid that nobody ever really knows about or doesn't recognize, yeah, that name sounds familiar, but I don't think I've ever met him. All I have to do, join a gang, automatic recognition. Automatic. I might not ever be able to be the star quarterback. I might not ever be able to be even the debate team captain, or I might not even be able to play checkers very well. But I can go out and get a butt whooping for 30 seconds and wear some colors to school, and everybody's going to know who I am. It's a status otherwise unattainable. Now, I bring this up only because of the discussion that took place afterwards. Now, unfortunately, we just had the 10th year anniversary of the Columbine shooting. But I bring them up only because of this. If I was to say black trench coats, what would you think of? Columbine. Now, if that would have been 11 years ago, if I'd have said black trench coats, you might have thought about up north in the snow. But I say it today, and it automatically, 10 years later, it still resonates with people that they remember Columbine. Why? Because when the kids started wearing black trench coats, they automatically got recognized. And people, and the kids started seeing, yeah, you know, they started getting kind of weird there at the end. They started getting kind of crazy and wearing black trench coats. And then somebody made a comment that maybe they started the black trench coat mafia, which ended up being false. They weren't in no gang, they didn't recruit anybody, and they weren't the black trench coat mafia, but they did wear black trench coats. But the point is all it took was a piece of clothing. So, is it safe to say that all it takes is for blue rag hanging out in my pocket if I walk into school? All it takes. Now all of a sudden they start looking at that kid because we all know what it means. All I got go to a kid that doesn't even know the kid down the street. But now, because he's a part of that gang, he now may have organized and national ties. Now compare this to us in our own lives. We go from working in this local community, in a local business, and we automatically go work for a Fortune 500 company. You can go to any of their offices anywhere in the country or around the world, and now all of a sudden you're somebody because you work for my company in someplace else. Yes, sir.
I need to ask you something. This is what has really happened in this country. We need to prepare us to build a new thing. Amen. Sir,
There's a lot of discussion about that very thing.
I'd like to say something. Government needs to gather with that again. That's what it's about. We're supposed to stand. Amen. We're supposed to make a deal. Amen. That's right. Sir, I want to feel the pop and shout it out to the kid. Amen. Yes, it's still. He talk about going my house away. Huh? We work for change today. But we can change to keep my name. So, we need to put God back in the program. Exactly. It's not looking no better. No, the word of God thing is word again. Amen. Because we took God out of the program, and tonight I'm going to be nothing about God. We need God in the program. Amen. Every nation that will say God is strong. Yes, sir. That's what that's going to be. Not getting no better. It's going to get worse. Exactly. It's going to get worse, sir.
And there's a lot of people having the same discussion.
Let me say something I got to get out.
Yes, sir.
When they lost the Senate, that's enough. You know what? I saw it go down. I told them to send it. Amen. Amen. I said, go away. They wrote me a letter. They know it's safe. I see things before it take place. Now, this is good. But you need to get God back in the program. Exactly. You need to get God back in here. Took battles through the devil, moved in. Kids getting killed. Amen. Where they live to learn to be walk the streets. Yes, sir. Amen. They clean the streets from the bad boys. Yes, sir. You've seen it, don't you? Yes, but oh my God, we have the Lord there with us. Amen. He's our leader. Amen. And watch. You hear me? Get out of here. Watch. They take God. God. Nothing else. Now, this thing is so deep, I want God to bless that girl right here while you stand. God, thank you. It's going to take God to get back on the right track. Amen. That's no man can be able to do it. It's going to take God Almighty. We took God out of the program. We're going to get him back in there. Amen. Luke chapter 2. The devil and he is strong. Amen. It's going to get worse. Exactly. God said we blood all in the streets, it's going to get worse. Amen. We got to get God back in there. Exactly. Somebody might be afraid to say this, but man not afraid to say it. Got to get God back in the program. Man not able to fix this. No, he not. Man can't fix it. Man lifted up and went so close to God, say, I repent. God made him. I got to get God back in there. This country is going down. And it might not like what I'm going to say. Spiritual weaknesses in high places. Supreme Council says the right 2 men to get married. Yes, 2 women, that's a liar. Amen. That's not laid before God Almighty. God is sick of it. This world is getting on fire now. Look at California. Look at it. Fire, fire, fire. God is sick of this man. Sick of it. Amen. I have to leave here. But you better get God in the program you want to work. Not out there. Yes, sir. Man can't do a thing. Man, I'm going so deep, God, that I repent. I made a man. Amen. I repent, I made it. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I got to leave. Sorry. Got it.
Thank you, sir.
Bye. Crying shame.
A gang has rank. It has structure. It has a defined leadership with promotional capability. They have written rules and regulations, secret codes to write in and talk in. Got a lot of people call it the secret squirrel stuff, the stuff that's cool and neat that these kids can get involved in. It's funny when you talk to some of these kids about the gang activities and the fact of what the gang makes them do. And you talk to them about it and they tell you about the parents who they don't like because they make them clean their room, or they make them go to school, or they make them behave. But yet when you ask them, well, what's the difference when the gang makes you do this or makes you do that? What is the difference? And I had one 12-year-old kid tell me that there's a difference between being disciplined and being a disciplined person. If I don't clean my room, my parents discipline me for not doing it. But by the gang disciplining me to do all these things, if I don't do them, I'm not a disciplined person. Now, it took me a while to grasp exactly what this 12-year-old was trying to explain to me. And basically, the only way I could tell it was this. If I do something wrong and you whip me, then I'm being disciplined for that. But when you take a kid, you send him into the military, what happens to him when he comes out of boot camp? He's a disciplined soldier. There's a difference between discipline and being a disciplined soldier. To these gangs, they're disciplined soldiers. They're disciplined street soldiers. That was what they explained to me from a 12-year-old about this particular thing here. Family generational influence is happening more and more. Why? Because we got younger and younger kids having kids. So the generational gap is closing in at a more fast rate than we've ever seen before. Family members are gangsters. I've now got first generation, second generation, third generation gang members. I've got grandpas now being gang members with their grandsons. When I was 8 years old, my grandparents were retired. Now, what is the age range? It's not uncommon. You have a 50-year-old son, a 30-year-old dad, and a 45-year-old grandpa. We now have 40-year-old grandparents. Back then, when I was here, we didn't have that. You have this happening. Can't really see it with this right here, but that's a gang member, and he has his son wearing gang clothing. They're recruiting their own kids. We have a problem in this country when we have two parents arrested for domestic violence because they're arguing over which gang their kid's going to be involved in. Because the mom's involved in one and the dad's involved in another. Happened in Denver, Colorado last year. Here's just some pictures of some kids doing this. Now, they may or may not have a clue what it is they're even doing. Now, there's a lot of issues wrong with this picture. Not only do you have dad playing with a gun and bullets with their little baby, but you've got mom back there smiling about it. It's cool to be a gang member. Here's a reversal. A kid recruited his mom into the gang. Now she's doing life for homicide. Pseudo-family replaces the natural family, provides the basic unmet needs of every human. Discipline, shelter, food, love and attention, financial support, survival. We had an 8-year-old boy arrested. An 8-year-old crip. And people always laugh and go, how did you arrest an 8-year-old crip? Well, he assaulted his dad with an aluminum baseball bat and almost put him in, well, he did put him in the hospital, almost killed him. Why? Because the gang ordered him to do so to prove that his loyalty and love was to the gang and not to his own family anymore. That's the dangers of the gang, is the fact that they can warp the mind like that. They taught an 8-year-old boy to go out and get a bat, the same bat that he played baseball with his dad, and go in there and bloody his body. Protection, self-explanatory. Intimidation, again, self-explanatory. It can be both sides. It can be a gang in a neighborhood that's intimidating the kid to be involved in that gang. It could be a gang from another neighborhood intimidating that kid because that kid's not in a gang. So it forces the kid to join the gang in that neighborhood for protection from another gang. Media influence. This is the hottest topic out there right now. And this is a whole 4-hour class just on this one right here, but I'm just going to give you just a taste of it. You know, it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of issues with society right now. And this class is not specifically dedicated to go through all of those issues. Now, I'm not singling out or pointing out any one group or any one person, but I'm going to show you things that these gang members are talking to me about. These are gang members that have pointed these ones out to me. Glorifies the gangster lifestyle. It's cool to be a gangbanger these days. It's cool to look like one, talk like one, be one. Why? Because they make it look like it's cool on TV. It's not all about the TV, but that's a lot of it. Now again, this is not Rusty Keeble talking. I've got kids that are telling me this. I've got kids that are telling me, quote, it's cool to be a gangster. Quote, it's a how-to guide to be a gangster. This kid's just playing with his gun, but watch. Whoops. By the time a child reaches 6th grade, they say that a kid has witnessed over 100,000 acts of violence and 8,000 murders. What happens to a mind when you see something over and over and over again? Gets desensitized. I've had guys, a friend of mine that's worked in homicide, that said that they threw up the first time that they saw a dead body. And then 5 or 6 or 8 of them later, they could eat a Big Mac while they're standing over it. Because after a while, it just becomes second nature. You've got video games out there like this one called 25 to Life. You could either be a criminal or you could be a law enforcement officer. The whole goal behind this game is to kill a cop and to get 25 years to life. That's the whole basis for this game. Here's another one out of Xbox, Crime Life, Gang Wars. It's a video game on how to be gang members and to go for gang wars. Here's an excerpt from that. It's a dead body on the street, guy on the street corner, and somebody killing somebody with a baseball bat. This is one of the video games. Here's another one. They're in a prison yard. He punches him, splits him up, he's bleeding. Why do we have this stuff? Ghetto Boys, okay? Ghetto Boys is a hip-hop group. They're also gang members out of Chicago. Larry Hoover. Larry Hoover is considered the godfather. He's the godfather of all the Chicago-based gangs there's one nation called the Folk Nation. That's a whole other class. He's been in prison for 30 years. He still has a lot of control over everything. His gang, they said that if it was a Fortune 500 company, would be in the top 10%. It's estimated that 10 years ago, they were bringing in over $100 million a year. And he's in prison. How does he get his message out? Well, I'll tell you how he gets his message out. This tape, the CD, Ghetto Boys, on track 1 is a telephone call from him while he's in prison being recorded through the inmate telephone to the group that recorded it and put it on the CD and then sold millions of it, which his message got out to all the people. It's very easy for them to get their message out. Then you have Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg, well-known Crip, self-admits it, throws up the Crip sign every time he's on TV. Doesn't make a difference if he's on Jay Leno, MTV, the music awards. It doesn't make a difference. He always wears blue. He's a Crip from California, right? Here he is in his concert, all wearing blue, smoking. Don't know if it's a cigarette or marijuana, but we all know that he smokes it. He's been arrested every 6 weeks for it. So what do we do for this? What do we do when we got a gang member who still self-admits he's a gang member? He may not be out there shooting, killing, and robbing people because he's got all his money, but he still goes out there and represents the gang and promotes the lifestyle. So what do we do with this individual? Well, I'll tell you what we do with this individual. people, we give them a television show called Fatherhood. Sounds like a real role model to me. If you watch the intro to this, he's doing the crip walk in the intro with his kids. Now, the crip walk is a dance that was created out in California. It's where you spell out the word crip with your foot. He's doing it in the intro. But we give him a television show. Okay? Now we have Ice-T. Ice-T, if you don't remember, back in the day, he's an OG. He's an original gangster. He's a crip. Here's one of his CDs, Original Gangster. Here's another one with the B side for the blood, C for the Crips. Right? He's the one who put out a record called Body Count, Murder for Hire, We'll Kill for Money. Then he puts out this record, this CD back in the first George Bush was in office, called Cop Killer. I got my black shirt on, I've got my black gloves on, I've got my ski mask on, this S has been too long, got my 12-gauge shot off, sawed off, so forth and so on. Cop Killer. Talking about Cop Killer. Right? So what do we do with this guy? Now, we give him a television show. Playing a cop. Now, how ironic is that? Now, here's my thing about this, because I'm going to speed up past this real quick. Both these individuals are very talented. There is absolutely no doubt with that. And Ice-T is actually an extremely good actor. I actually like this show. It aggravates me to watch it. But I like the show. He's a very good actor. He's played in a lot of movies. But what I don't agree with is the fact that he has the capability with his celebrity to truly make a difference, and he doesn't. He doesn't go back and say, I did that when I was young, I was stupid, but I got my act together, and now I'm making this, and here's how you can do that. He doesn't do that. Neither one of them do that. They still take that money and they use it to help flaunt themselves. Now this is not, again, this is not me talking. 2005, during this video, Snoop Dogg and Ice-T are on the stage singing about cop killing and big gangbangers. And at the end of it, Ice-T throws up the Crip sign and says, the Crips of LA will never die. We will only multiply. He not only promoted it, but he even put himself in the state. So he's not utilizing his celebrity to make a difference. I mean, for goodness sakes, a couple years ago, they named him as the 2007 Pimp of the Year. All while he's playing a cop on TV. That's what we're dealing with. Is that they can go and say, well, you can still gangbang and make a fortune doing it because the kids don't understand it. And again, this is not me saying this. I've got kids telling me this stuff. Ice Cube's another one. We're just going to go through these pretty quick. We all have seen his movies. He's a Crip. This is his concert. And you can't really hear the music, but this guy, that's him. He's up there and he's going to do the Crip walk. Now, that's not a concert. How many thousands of people do you think are in his concert? Throwing up hand signs. And you can't hear the audio, but he's saying, throw your C up. Everybody C. C for the term Crips. That's right there. Everybody C. You see the flag hanging out of his left hand pocket. They have their own CDs. They're up here. They're in movies everywhere. It's everywhere you go. Okay? And we have this kid. This is a band that's local. I mean, this is not a local band. This is today. This isn't 5 years ago. This is today. It's called the Naked Brothers Band. That's actually what their name is. But they sing a song called I Don't Want to Go to School. I had an 8-year-old up screaming it at the top of her lungs about how she didn't want to go to school. Yes, it's true. The teacher's messing with him. I don't want to go to school. You can't deny me my freedom. This is what the kids are listening to. Factors influencing membership: home life, school environment, criminal history, incarceration, family generational influence. We talked about all this stuff. Recruiting locations: schools, churches, team nightclub, athletic events, hangouts. Initiations: you get beat in. Basically, depending on what the game is, it could be 30 seconds, 60 seconds, it could be 3 people, 6 people, a whole bunch of people. We're part of just a bit of it. Here's the 18th Street. They're going to beat this kid down for 18 seconds. That's how you get into a game. And when they get done, they'll pick him up and give him a hug. They might send him on a mission to commit a crime. The more violent, the better. This can happen to female members. Happens all the time. 2 arrested. Girl boasted having with an AIDS carrier. They get blessed in. Get one of these numbers, but then when it's over with, they send them out to commit a crime. We had an 18-year-old kid, soaking wet, might have been 100 pounds in jail, scared to death. Gang recruited him in, blessed him in. Then after they blessed him in, they gave him the real rules. And the very first rule said, you will carry out a mission or you will become the mission. They don't tell them that when they first get in. These 2 knuckleheads created their own gang in our own jail. Ended up being pretty big. They got 2 chapters and we ended up putting them in prison. But they started it. 2 inmates in the Orange County Jail in 1999, founded with the intention of building a money-making empire. Now look at all the little words in here. Close-knit family and organization. They were going to create chapters based off of what the gang members' crime of choice was. This particular chapter was all home invasions, and this particular one was all carjacking. These different sets of gangs. This was their signs and symbols. Again, I'm just showing you all these because they don't have to be nationally recognized gangs in order to become something big. This was created right here in Orlando, in the Orange County Jail. Ended up getting 2 different chapters. Now, luckily, we found this information beforehand, and we ended up putting them in prison before they got out of hand. They have their own rules that they make these guys sign. Still, the male membership is the largest at 85%. But the female membership is the fastest growing, at a 15% increase. This is local. Female gang members. Girl, 14 guys in gang shooting. 10 girls charged in armed robbery. Females are starting to pop up. A whole lot more than they used to. 3 female gang members charged in killings. I see this stuff all the time. Half the people injured or killed in a drive-by shooting were not even the intended target. Like that 9-year-old boy in Sarasota. This is what ends up happening. And here's the best part, gang graffiti. Why? Because I think this is the most under-recognized, or not the word I'm looking for here. People just don't pay attention to it. Why? Because it's just graffiti, it's not going to hurt anybody. Well, let me tell you, there's a thing called quality of life. And it was a concept that Mayor Rudy Giuliani implemented in New York City when he got elected as mayor. Because people tend to go after the high targets and leave the smaller ones. And what ends up happening is that people like you and I don't really see the high stuff every single day. But it's the little bitty things that make me and you feel bad in our neighborhood. Like a run-down neighborhood where we see a yard that ain't mowed or a fence is tore down. That's the stuff that you and I see on a daily basis that makes us feel bad. It's called quality of life. When we feel good about ourselves, we feel good about our neighborhood. When we feel good about our neighborhood, we feel better about ourselves. It's the quality of life things. But we don't go after those things. We allow the graffiti to continue and continue and continue. But we have to change that. We all know what graffiti is. It's tagging. They're tagging their neighborhoods, they're tagging for recognition, they're tagging for recruitment, they're tagging to express themselves about something, and worst of all, to claim territory. If you've got one gang tagging, that's bad. You've got two gangs tagging in the same area, that's really bad. Because there's probably going to end up some type of rivalry occurring and some shootout because you tagged over my graffiti. We have to go after the graffiti and clean it up. We have to document it first. Because we have to know whether or not the gang, what gang it is. What are they doing? Because it talks to the streets. If it's upside down or crossed out, it's another gang doing it as a form of disrespect. Again, that's the reason why we have to document it. We have to be able to know whether or not this was the gang that did it, or was it another gang that put it up there to disrespect it. Because that tells you two things. That tells me that I've got one gang here for sure, and I believe I might have two, because if I'm a gang and I'm putting up somebody else's gang graffiti, I'm only doing that for one reason. And that's because I'm either hearing that they're here, or another gang is coming into my territory, so I'm going to disrespect them with graffiti. That graffiti is they call it the newspaper of the streets. You document it, you track it, you get rid of it. Trip for Life. These are just some graffitis to show you. 407 Sir 13. 407 is obviously our area code. Sir 13 is a gang that's based out of Southern California. We've got a tremendous influence of them in northwest Orange County.
So those 407 practices are wearing?
Not all of them are gang related. That goes back like a teardrop and a pant leg rolled up. It became a fad. So not every kid wearing a 407 area code is a gang. Again, what does it tell you? This tells me a whole bunch. Okay, obviously Boo is dead. Because it's in memory of Boo, right? Well, you see WSC underneath the 8-ball. So you can tell if that's the West Side Crips. Okay, ½ ounce of product underneath it. This is probably telling me that Boo is dead over a ½ ounce of product. Now, what else tells me that is the 8-ball that's cracked. See the 8-ball with the crack in it? Okay, in the drug world, what 8-ball is? Okay, that's the 8-ball. Where that came from was when the Crips and the Folk Nation came together to sell 8-ball of drugs. Okay? Now what that is you've got the Folk Nation pitchfork. You got the C for the Crips. When you put the two together, it creates the 8-ball. So if you see that with the 8-ball intact, then you know that the folks and the Crips are still aligned with each other. But with it cracked like that, that tells you there's a rift between those two groups. And because the colors are very similar, you can't tell who this is. But you could probably tell that it's probably safe to say that Boo is a West Side Crip. That's why the WSC is up there. And probably Boo did something wrong. The folks, which is a bigger group, probably had the West Side Crips pushing 8-balls in the community. He either lost an 8-ball or used it without telling anybody, and they killed him for it. Well, that caused a rift between the folks and the West Side Crips, and now the West Side Crips went up to put that memorial and the indicator that we're not running with you anymore. See how simple that was? That little bit of graffiti told you all of that. But do you think that that ends here? Do you think that could possibly generate more violence down the road? Absolutely. This right here tells us a whole lot. You got the Latin King hand sign and the Nieta hand sign. Nieta is a Puerto Rican prison gang. They're joined at the wrist with handcuffs. See the handcuffs? That's telling you that the Latin Kings and the Nietas come together while incarcerated. They got tired of being victimized by the Folk Nation gang. Again, simple graffiti tells an entire story. Because of this, we locked all of our gang members down and didn't have one single incident. But if we hadn't got this, we could have had a war. Got to document this stuff. It's important. This is another one, very simple, 7414. We had somebody look at that and go, well, I didn't know. I thought it was the locker combinations. It was combo lock. 7414 is the letters of the alphabet. 7 is G, 4 is D, 14 is N. Gangster Disciple Nation, 7414. Here's another one, 7414. This was becoming more and more common. Branding, because it's not as easily recognizable. If you're walking down the street with this, you're not going to notice it as well if it was a big 8-inch tattoo on his arm. But that's actually a hot butter knife. He branded the pitchfork on himself. 700 Dog is the 700 boys down in Orlando. They'll hide tattoos within tattoos. The guy over to the right didn't realize that I would recognize it. He thought I would just see Jesus. That's Jesus throwing a gang sign. He didn't think that we would recognize that. Folk love across the knuckles. 700 block. Again, just a tattoo from downtown. These are all local. IGN, Imperial Gangster Nation. Again, these are local. AOK, Almighty Latin Kings. Again, all these photographs came off of people in Orlando. I took this picture at the Juvenile Assessment Center years ago. This became one of the most famous pictures in the country. I was in a California game class out in LA, and this picture popped up on a screen. That's a Pookie, or what do they call it? Pokemon? A Pikachu. That's a Pokemon throwing a Latin King hand sign. That was on a 12-year-old. 13, the Roman numeral 13. That's for the Sir 13s. You've got them local here in Apopka. And all over Northwest Orange County. Again, Sir 13. See the 13 in the bottom of the S? I don't have a little arrow thing. You see it with the 1 and the 3? That's Sir 13. Nortino 14. You'll see a 1 in the N and a 4 in the E. Now let me give you a little bit about this. Both of these gangs originated from California. You've got Serenos, which is southern, and you've got Nortinos, which is northern. The dividing line in California is Bakersfield. Every Hispanic and Mexican gang south of Bakersfield falls underneath the Sir 13. Every one of them north of Bakersfield falls under Nortinos. So these are not just really a gang, they are a nation of gangs. Now the way I can explain that would be like what the NFL is. Now, the NFL probably shoot me for saying that. But I'm using it as a comparison. NFL is not a football team. It is a nation that all the football teams fall under. Same thing. The Serenos is the umbrella that all the little gangs fall under. The 13 comes from the alphabet. The 13th letter of the alphabet is the M. You heard of the Mexican Mafia? Mexican Mafia is a prison gang. They control all the streets south of Bakersfield. All the street gangs have to pay the Mexican Mafia from the prison a street tax for operating in Southern California. So the Serenos is where the 13 comes from. Sir 13. Serenos that are aligned with the 13, which is the Mexican Mafia. Flip that for the Nortinos. Both of these groups are represented not only in Florida, but in Central Florida. Pretty heavily. The Nortino 14s are very popular, for lack of a better term, in Lake County and Polk County, but they are slowly moving their way this way. We've seen their graffiti already pop up in Northwest Orlando. They'll hide tattoos within tattoos. You could look at this tattoo and think it was nothing. But you look in that little block, LGD, Latin Gangster Disciples. If you just seen that tattoo, you probably wouldn't recognize it was 3 blocks with the acronym LGD in it. This is a gang out of Connecticut. These were documented in our jail. MS-13, you guys have probably heard about them. They're all over the news. A lot of people misrepresent the number 13. They see 13 tagged up somewhere, they think it's the MS-13. In most cases, it will be the Sir 13, not the MS-13. But we do have MS-13. Just another way for them to tattoo themselves. Mara, which means gang. Gang 13, rest in peace, crazy. Now, a lot of these guys are not tattooing themselves like that anymore because in Central America, they don't have the rules and the laws like we do. So in Honduras, they actually opened up a law down there that said that if you are a gang member, you get 6 to 9 years in prison just for being one. Well, the gang identifier, the tattoo, is what identifies you as a gang. So technically, these guys can get put in jail for 6 years for a tattoo. So a lot of these guys are no longer putting tattoos on. They'll put the tattoos in places you wouldn't think to look. I've seen them behind the ear. This guy wasn't too worried about people knowing it. They'll put them in the web of their thumb or the web of their fingers. They'll hide them where you can't see them. I've even seen them in the webs of their toes. Again, Sir 13, 18, but the WS for West Side 18 for 18th Street, which is another West Coast gang. Again, the 18. If you just look at that tattoo, you wouldn't recognize that. But you have to know what you're looking at. But that number 18 is 18th Street. This was pretty self-explanatory though. WS for the 18. Gangster Disciples. Again, the D in the middle for the Disciples. The 6-pointed star. Now, in schools, a lot of people have an issue with this one because the 6-point star is the Jewish Star of David. And they're trying to claim themselves that, well, this is my religious symbol. And we've got a freedom of religion. So there's an issue behind that. So there's more to it than just that. But I'll tell you where this came from, very briefly. One of the founders of this group in Chicago is David Barksdale. He died. Well, they wanted a symbol that would represent him, so they got the Star of David to represent David Barksdale. So that's where that came from. R60, if you just saw that as a kid, you would not know. You would not really understand that R60 was Roland 60 Crips. R60. Again, West Side 18th Street, Sir 13.
Sir 13, that will not make their E's correct. They always make it look like a 3. That's all day, and that's it. Every E was a 3.
Now, you see in a minute when I showed you the 8-ball, that's what the 8-ball looks like. It's a 3-pointed crown with their hands. The Latin pink sign is the I love you sign up. If you throw it down, you're disrespecting it. Vice killers. They have their own alphabet, their own codes and signs and symbols. They may tattoo those on their body. You wouldn't recognize what that meant or what that is. But that is his name, Cisco, written in his gang alphabet. Again, this was a juvenile here locally. That's what their alphabet looks like when you write a letter. Did you read that? This is what the letter said. Yo, what's up, Rocket? Wanted a copy of our alphabet, so I gave him one. I talked to Looney, he said he's going to pay. You know who family to visit tonight? He also said there's a war on, Slavs killed the folk downtown. That was years ago. We had a folk nation member that was shot and killed downtown, and the Bloods did it. Slavs is a derogatory term for Bloods. Well, that was written in code. If we hadn't found that, there would have been another shooting. That's why it's important. Now, based off of that, let me tell you what happened. This happened in Northwest, or in the Panhandle of Florida 2 years ago. I got a call from the sergeant at SRO in a school up there. He said, look, word is we might have a school shooting or something. We don't really know what it is. But we found this coded letter. And we don't think it's anything, but we figured we might just want to check. And we figured that, you could do it. We did a lot of communication in my office. And I got the letter and I said, well, it's going to take a while. It was a pretty good coded letter. And I said, do you have any idea what you think it might say? Because you want to look for certain identifiers that can give you a starting point. He goes, we really don't have a clue. He said, but it might be tied to some type of shooting or something. I said, well, this will take too long. Let me send it to the FBI. They've got some fancy supercomputer up there that spits this stuff out. So I sent it to a friend of mine in Quantico at the Behavioral Science Center. 20 minutes later, he calls me back. He says, get that sergeant on the phone. got him on the phone. It was a letter written in code that was going to do a school shooting, a school massacre the next morning. This kid had had contracts signed with kids that he was not going to shoot, just to tell them to make sure they were anywhere where he was going to be. And he signed contracts so they would believe him. And this kid was going to come in, his first shot was going to take out the secretary at the front desk. The second one was going to wait for the SRO to respond. He was going to take out everybody in the admin building, out front, then the SRO, and then when he got done with that, he was going to go back and pull a Columbine. Now, if some kid hadn't got smart and said something, we could have possibly had another school massacre in Florida. So again, this stuff is very important. Here's just simple kinds of codes: BOS, bash on site, beat on site, kill on site. Sports paraphernalia. This was a real big one. I get a lot of phone calls about this. Let me say this does not mean if a kid wears one of these, he's a gang member. It's to show you that gangs will make anything represent themselves. KC, backwards, it's Crip Killer. Bulls, Bloods usually live longer, sucker. NC, Neighborhood Crip. Crips Rule for the Colorado Rockies. D, the Detroit Tigers for Disciples. Anytime you crack something, it's disrespect. Well, that's the perfect gang symbol. That's a 5-point star that's automatically cracked. But that's what the Houston Astros symbol is. So the People Nation, to disrespect the People Nation, so the Folk Nation will wear that one. Duke, Disciples Utilizing Knowledge Every Day. SF for San Francisco Giants, for Super Gangster Folk. Now, does that not look like a pitchfork? Well, that's Indiana University. That looks like an upside-down pitchfork. UNLV, Vice Lord United Nations. And this one irritates me because I'm a huge Pittsburgh fan. But the colors are black and gold for Latin Kings. And black New York Yankees hats. Now, what color is the New York Yankees? Blue and white, right? These were not homemade. These were bought in a mall. Okay? These were not homemade. Why do you think it is that we need to have black and gold New York Yankees hats?
To match their sneakers. My daughter has a pink one.
Red and black. Okay? Latin King colors. Bloods colors. Black and gray, 18th Street colors. Black and blue, MS-13, Folk Nation, and Crips colors. Now there has been article after article after article after article, and there's been all these companies have been talked to because of what they're doing, and they're saying they're not doing it because of the gang stuff. And I'm not saying gang members run these companies. What I'm saying is that they are producing anything they can to make money. And it started in the streets because you've got a lot of gang members in New York that don't they don't wear the colors blue and white. Well, the Latin Kings won't wear New York Yankees hat in New York because it's not black and gold. So they started making them in the streets so they would make sure that they wore them. And it became making a lot of money. So now they mass produce them in these companies and sell them in the stores. Look underneath the hats. These are just some things that were taken off of people locally. Things that you may see in a kid's backpack or something. There's Gangster Pooh and Gangster Ricky again. They'll hide things in places that you wouldn't think to look because they don't think that you'll look there. This is their gang knowledge written inside this Holy Bible. Because they don't think that you would think that they would ever desecrate the holy book. But they do. The inside of a backpack, the back side, the part that's on the back, that's almost like when you go in to search a child's room, how often do you actually go in and close the door and look behind the door? Don't see this too much. This was here too, where they actually wear their gang shirts. Their socks. They'll wear their socks to where it represents the gang colors. They will do anything they possibly can to wear their colors. Winter Garden boys. They'll shave in the back of their heads. WG boys.